Everyone. All right, let's do this. Christina, hi. Okay, let's start out with, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd love for Christina Ernie to lead us in the pledge.
Oh, man.
I know.
All right, everyone. I pledge allegiance to
the flag
of the United
of the United States
States
of America,
And to the
and the republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty.
and justice for all.
I think we were taught that in first grade, right? It had to be first grade. All right. All right, Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment?
I do not have any public comment at this time, Rscba.
Okay, thanks so much, Corey.
Just want to do a quick roll call.
Go right ahead. Sorry about that. I missed it.
That's quite all right. I will start with our new board member, Councilwoman Charlene Bybee.
Here. Good morning.
Andy Chapman,
Morning.
Daniel Farahi,
Good morning here.
Shannon Keel,
Here.
Don Kornstein,
Here.
and Commissioner Lucy is not on the call this morning. Mayor Rscba,
Here.
Ann Silver,
Here.
Mark Sturbins.
Here.
Roll call complete.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to approval of the agenda, and the notes are that item F4 has been pulled. So with that being said, may I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion. Shannon Keel.
I'll second the motion. Ann Silver.
All right, great. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay. At this time, can I get approval of the minutes? May I get a motion? The minutes of September 24th.
Motion from Mark Sturbins.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All
Mayor
those,
Rscba, Mayor
Yeah,
Rscba, I just need to abstain because I wasn't in attendance. So if you can mark me as an abstention.
okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. Madam Clerk, I believe my agenda is reflecting item E1. Are we on the same page?
Yes, I'm sorry. Say that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so what we have is the board appointment of the National Resort Association, and I believe there was a name submitted. It didn't make it on this agenda. So what I would ask, and I'm going to ask legal, can we, so since Mr. Kornstein is still on the board till the end of the month, can we just bring it back to the next board meeting?
We can. So Mr. Kornstein would be on the board, or he would be active until the end of December. If we bring it back at the January meeting, his seat would technically be vacant from January 1 until the appointment is made at the January meeting.
Okay, and in between, we don't have any board meetings, and Mr. Lucy is not here, and I should let the board know that this is typically a vote by the electeds. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Per 244A601, board nominations are discussed by the entire board, but only voted on by the elected officials.
Okay, and Mr. Lucy is not present, so let's bring it back to the next board meeting. So do I have to take a motion on that? Sound good, Ben?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think we need to take action on that. We're just going to bring it back.
Okay, perfect. Moving right along. Item E3.
Item E2 is.
Where are we?
We're on item E2.
Oh, there it is. I see it at the bottom.
Oh, big business, yes.
And by the way, Corey, you did a great job with this. I mean, I got to give this to Rick because it's nice and bold. I can actually read it, so I don't know why I'm skipping over items. This is what happens when you get old. The font gets smaller and smaller, even when it gets bigger. Okay, item E2. This is Team Reno Tahoe, big business, and we are excited to meet one of your team members, Robert Chisel. You want to take us into this, I believe?
If I could just interject quickly, Madam Mayor, I've actually got E2 as the Destination Marketing Organization Best Practices presentation. I think you're reading E3 as the Team Reno Tahoe. So we can take them out of order if you want, but I just want to make sure the record's clear.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, that's, yeah, my agenda is flip-flopped. Okay, that's fine. Sounds good. Let's just go into item E2, what you have on your agenda. Perfect.
So that is Destination Marketing Organization Best Practices. Bill Hanbury, Searchwide Global, Erica Olson on Strategy will present DMO best practices and key priorities.
Perfect. And where are you, Bill? There you are. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, everybody. It's afternoon on the East Coast, but it's good to see you all, and happy holidays to one and all. It's nice to be with you again, and it's nice to see Charles sitting in the corner there as your CEO, and it's a moment of pride for Searchwide and for Mike and I that has been accomplished, and we're all underway. Erica and I are gonna kind of jointly run you through a brief deck. This is going to take 10 to 15 minutes. We're actually going to do some polling as part of that. And Erica, maybe what we'll do is if you could start with the first slide, and then I'll take it from there.
You got it. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Bill. It's nice to co-present with you, and just bringing this back around. The purpose of the 10 or 15 minutes we have together is continuing the conversation from the August retreat, where the board established some working priorities and then some guiding principles for the board's conduct, if you will. And with Charles on board and with our new CEO in place, we thought it was important to bring this back around, and also, quite frankly, just to reconnect with the work from August. So again, just recapping, these are the 8 working priorities that came out of the August meeting. These will flow into an actual planning process once Charles wants to move into that, probably likely in the springtime. So we are just really building off of 7 and 8, which is this notion of, you all said you wanted to be a high functioning board built on best practices. So this is anchoring and kind of continuing the conversation about that. So we are going to, as Bill just mentioned, we're going to come back around and look at these 6 guiding principles that you agreed to as board members. In the August retreat, again, it was a loose conversation, but we did say, hey, these are these things we can keep in front of ourselves as board members in the context of conduct. So before we do that, though, Bill, you're going to walk us through a recap of best practices of high performing DMOs, and let me know, and I'll advance the slides as you see fit.
Yeah, you can go ahead there, Erica, if you would. I just want to remind everybody again of some fundamentals around best practices as it relates to how we manage destination marketing organizations. And you've seen some of this before, but some of it is a re-emphasis that I believe is still fundamentally important today, just as it was back in August and back in September when we had conversations. First of all, America's best DMOs position themselves as shared community assets, playing an integral role in uplifting the destination's overall economy and quality of life. That is a fundamental to the organization and something that you should never forget as a board of director. This not only includes marketing the destination, but also helping to manage the visitor product and experience. And this is a real trend among DMOs across the United States, literally across the world right now. It's no longer just about room nights. It's about making sure that the visitor product and the experience itself are matching up with what consumers really want. High performance DMOs are aggressive and business oriented, using marketing innovation plus technological and digital expertise to maximize the community investment on their mission. And the simple reality is, this is in some respects a recent phenomena for DMOs. This has not always been the case. Many DMOs have been very staid, very methodical, very conservative about their approaches, and those days are over. And the simple reality is, as we start to come out of the economic recovery, it's going to require that we become much more aggressive, much more entrepreneurial, much more thoughtful about innovation than we have in the past, particularly from a technological and digital perspective. The best DMOs assure that the stakeholders have a substantive way of contributing to and communicating with the organization. You as a board, you cannot be an island unto yourselves. You have to continue to reach out to community. You need to be open and accessible to community. And I've seen that from this board, by the way. I think there's a real sense here that you're representing the entire community, and that's actually a very encouraging sign. Erica? Some more on best practices. DMOs are community assets, not just room night booking machines. And that's all fantastic. We need to book room nights. And we do need to attract visitors, but you also have to play a foundational role in economic vitality and community quality of life. I mean, that is part of your responsibility as a board, to be considering and thinking about those kinds of topics. And again, very often in past days, it's been all about just one thing. How many room nights can we book? And I'll be the first to tell you that that's important. And I'm sure you're going to charge Charles with a very significant objectives and goals around those areas, but there also needs to be objectives and goals around vitality and community quality of life, and what role that you play in that vitality and community quality of life. The board is responsible to make sure the DMO is relevant and connected to community. The DMO spends valuable community financial resources. Therefore, in theory, the organization is collectively owned by the community. And so that the various taxes that are flowing into the organization, in many respects, are community assets. And the board has a fiduciary and civic obligation to make the organization relevant and ensure ROI on those investments. And again, this is a new era, a new dawn for many boards of directors, DMO boards of directors, who, often sat in their lofty towers and really didn't want to be too concerned about a return on investment or civic obligation. Those are new terms, and I think those are terms that are relative to this board of directors. And I think you already understand that there's some real value to that. So Erica will go another. There we go. The board has an obligation to oversee the mission statement, management performance, and ensure ROI. The board also needs to guarantee that the RSCVA is effective, innovative, inclusive, transparent, aggressive, as well as service and team oriented. So like delivering on the mission, these organizational values are also within your core responsibility. And you need to make sure that the staff is adhering to these core responsibilities, these core organizational values, I should say. And this will help build a quality organization. And it is on your watch, it's your responsibility to make sure that those kinds of things are happening. The DMO is one place where board members can be creative, then the collaborative glue that holds community businesses together and envisions a brighter future. I'm here to tell you that I don't believe there is any other organization that on the short term can best affect the economy of the community. It's the CVA more than anyone else. And I know the economic development authorities and the chambers of commerce are intimately involved in in driving the economy forward. But from a short-term perspective, the CVA is really the one place where you can step on the gas and almost instantaneously receive benefit from it. So that's a good thing, and it's something that you guys need to be stewards of. And then last but not least here around best practices, these words define board responsibility. Strategic, certainly not tactical. Macro, not micro. 30,000 feet, not in the weeds. Policy, not procedure. Strategy, not tactics. And then here's some concepts around the CEO and how you best manage the CEO and how the CEO best interacts with you. The board will manage the CEO and his performance goals. The CEO, in turn, will manage the organization's overall performance goals and assure success. The staff reports exclusively to the CEO, not to the board of directors. And as some of us know on the call, this has been an issue in the past, and hopefully that's now going to be resolved. The variance between the CEO and the board will be zero relative to productivity measures and overall management approach. There should be no delta between what you guys are thinking and what the CEO is thinking at any given time. The DMO boards struggle when they can't extract themselves from micromanaging the internal management process. That may be the number one problem for DMOs these days with boards of directors, is that the board of directors sometimes feels like they know more about it than the CEO does. They insert themselves in it, and it creates a hodgepodge from a management perspective that just doesn't work. And then finally on this slide, the CEO is responsible for running the DMO in a way that meets the objectives established by the board. And then on the last slide here, collaboration between the board and the CEO. It's a good time to look at this again now that we have our new CEO in place. There needs to be a clear, concise communication between the board and the CEO. When a CEO clearly understands the board's expectation, they can focus on their own goals, which in turn clearly drives the CVA goals. So there's a rhyme to that reason. And the more clarity you have with the CEO, the better off we are collectively as an organization. The CEO must communicate clearly with the board, and the board in turn must take the CEO's concerns seriously and work to find common ground when necessary. And again, we talked about this back in August. We talked about it in September. The board only has one employee, the CEO. And now, if there are issues that are surfacing, I don't believe they are. I've had a chance to spend quite a bit of time with Charles in recent days. They ought to be addressed immediately if there are concerns or issues. And I certainly haven't heard of any, and I'm not assuming there will be any, but as they do surface, they should be addressed immediately and concisely. And Eric, I'll turn it back to you there for a minute if I could.
Got it. Thanks, Bill. So again, we're bringing this back around for today in the context of establishing the next chapter of the organization. Key component to the effectiveness of the organization is a high-performing board. You all asked for that. In August, we took all of the ideas that Bill mentioned and proposed some we just call them guiding principles, but rules of the road, code of conduct, whatever words we want to use. Guiding principles feels a little better. And so we wanted to just bring this back around today, just again to reconnect, quite frankly, because there's so much going on with everything, of course, but also just because you all have said many times that as a board of directors, the more effective the board of directors can be, the more effective the new CEO, the more effective the leadership team, the organization, and the impact overall. So these are the 6 guiding principles, codes of conduct that we landed on, that you landed on in August. And we just wanted to take a minute and just see, okay, how are you doing? How are we doing? How's the board of directors doing? And we're gonna take a pass at putting up a poll for a second, and I'll explain the instructions in a minute. We haven't done this before with this group, so it should work. We practiced it. But we're gonna ask just for the board to reflect on how are you doing as a whole against these 6 guiding principles. And I'll explain myself in how we're going to do it, but let's just read them for a quick sec. So here are the 6. The first one is we, the board of directors, commits to being community ambassadors and walking as a single board, no matter what, not being public critics. Number 2 is making decisions based on what's best for the RSCVA and the community, not individual businesses or municipalities. Again, similar themes to what you heard from Bill earlier, focusing on strategy, not tactics. Number 4 is we will consider it an honor to serve on the board. We, the board of directors, have a community responsibility to guide the RSCVA to the best of our abilities. We'll take time and display the cooperative spirit necessary to deliver on that responsibility. And the 6th one is we will voice our thoughts, opinions, and concerns to both the chair and the co-chair, who will then communicate that to the board, to the CEO as one board. So those are the 6, again, those are the 6 guiding principles to take all of those best practices and distill them down. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put up a poll and we're going to ask just for the board members to please provide your perspective on how are you doing as a body against adhering to or exhibiting these guiding principles. Please be honest and critical. And we're only asking board members to contribute. It's not anonymous. We're not going to put up how everybody provided their polling answers, but it will be in the minutes. So just as you know. So Corey, Cameron, can we have the poll, please? And let's just take a minute for the board members, if you could please provide your perspective on how you feel as a body you are doing as a board of directors on a 3-point scale against these six guiding principles. We'll give it just a second. And when you're done, you can just scroll down in that little window. There should be a submit button.
Hey, Erica,
Yes.
this is Councilwoman Bybee. Since this is my first day on the board, it really is going to be hard for me to assess how we're doing because I've only been here 26 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I meant to mention that. Welcome, and certainly, yeah, please don't feel like you need to answer these questions.
Okay, thank you.
Totally get it. Yep. But we'll do this again in 3 months, and so then a few more than 27 minutes.
Erica, could I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment?
This is really, okay, how do we get this back up? Go right ahead, Anne.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment, and maybe this is wordsmithing, but at the very top, it says be honest and critical. And below that, it says we should not be public critics. I'm suggesting that maybe it should be honest and constructive rather than critical.
That's, thank you. That is.
Yeah, and that's a good change. That is a good change.
Thank you.
It looks like we have 5 of the board members. Thank you very much for providing your perspective. I think, are we waiting for anybody else? Let me know. Oh, 6, okay, we're good. I think we have 6 board members with board member Bybee observing and not contributing for today. So with that, let's close the poll. And when we do that, Cameron, Corey, we can see what everyone's saying. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to kind of look through. You should be able to see the results on your screen. You have to scroll down in the window to see everything, but I'll read it off. Just as a headline, we didn't necessarily want to have a whole big massive conversation about this today, but rather just maybe observe where there might be opportunity to continue working and where you all might want to put focus over the next 90 or 180 days. So so on the first one, walking as a single board, being community ambassadors, a little bit across all three of them, but 3 of the 6 of you said sort of. So a little bit of work to do there. On making decisions based on what's best for the RSCVA. Half of you thought sort of, half thought totally. Focusing on strategy, not tactics. 4 of the 6 of you all said sort of. So we'll continue to work on that. I'm honored to serve on the board. Almost all of you said totally, which is great. Guiding the RSCVA in a cooperative and supportive spirit, a little bit of split opinion there, half and half, sort of, half totally. Voicing your thoughts, opinions, and concerns to both the chair and the co-chair, again, half and half there too. So that gives us a perspective that, again, kind of halfway there, in some cases all the way there, depending upon your perspective. Like I said, our intention's not to go deep on all of this right now, but rather just to provide a bit of perspective on what you all are thinking. And then also, again, in that vein of the effectiveness of the board, you all asked to be a high-performing DMO board. So let's use this as our touchstone to continue to keep looking at that. Madam Chair, is there anything else that you would like us to add on this right now? I know we just kind of wanted to touch on these pieces and let us reflect on intention for the next, like I said, couple of months and where there's opportunity. But is there anything else you'd like me to cover here?
No, I think you've done a good job.
Bill, anything to add in what you're seeing in the responses? And if
Yeah, it's yeah, I'm not surprised at the responses. There's definitely some work that needs to continue to be done by the board from a collaboration perspective, and I think this is a great way to keep tabs on it and to continue to make it a priority for the board. There may be other opportunities to do some training activities that ought to be considered, but I think overall, just keeping top of mind awareness that you have to constantly be thinking about these things and vigilant about them in order to perform it at an optimal level as a board.
Cool. Thank you, everyone, for contributing your thoughts on this. It's nice to use the technology in a quick way. And again, we'll bring this back around in 3 months' time as well, just, in the vein of, we just want to, you would ask to keep this in front of you all. So we'll continue to do that, Bill and myself. And I'm just going to wrap us up really quickly. I think I can close that poll window. Just to wrap us up for a minute. I'm not going to go through all of this, but rather to say, right, one of the things now with Charles in his role and the priorities that you've provided, the expectation will be to come back to the board with a planning process once things have settled out a little bit. Of course, the expectation is to set a plan for a couple of years, not a super long-term plan. Again, I'm not going to go through all this. We did go through this in August, but just to anchor for a minute, the thought process would be that we would move into a refresh of the current strat plan, given the fact that it's a new world. And that would roll into the FY22 organizational goals, overall CEO goals, and of course, departmental goals. And all of that will happen kicking off in the February timeframe, but more to come on that. Yeah, we are not going to get into it now. That just lets you know it's coming. So with that, Madam Chair, I will pass it back to you. That concludes what Bill and I wanted to cover.
Okay, fantastic. I like that you're checking the temperature now, and then we can check it. How often, Erica, do you suggest that you sort of do a check-in?
Well, Bill and I were collaborating on that, and I'll ask Bill to add in 2 seconds, just to maybe we could come back to the board once a quarter, because I think part of it's really, this is really probably fairly obvious, but I think it's also really good to just stay grounded in it. So our thought process was quarterly. Bill, I'll pass it to you to add on to that.
Yeah, no, Erica, I think that's a good approach. And it would be really beneficial, obviously, to convene in person at some point to have this conversation. Zoom calls are terrific, but for some of this conversation, I think it does require more interpersonal connections. And so we'll just have to wait for the vaccine and the return to some level of more normalcy before we do that. But I know I would very much like to sit down with the board again at some point and you know, particularly with our new CEO in tow, and have a conversation around, you know, what are the defining issues. You know, it may be 3-6 months into Charles's tenure, and what are the most defining issues that you know we can make carburetor adjustments on that will be beneficial to Charles and beneficial to the board of directors.
Yeah, I think that is a great idea, Bill, because maybe as you do that along the way, quite honestly, that I think that really helps you sort of guide maybe where you're seeing some pain points, right? And maybe had we been doing something like that all along, we would have been alerted that there were issues sort of taking place, right? So I think it's really, really spot on. So great job, Bill. All right,
Thank you,
anything
Mayor. Thank you.
With that being said, I am going to ask Mr. Kennedy, we don't have to take any motion on this, right? This is just a presentation.
Correct. This is not an action item.
Perfect. All right. So we move on, and I'm going to send it back to Madam Clerk to take us into the next item.
Thank you, Rscba. Item E3 is Team Reno Tahoe Big Business. Chair Hillary Rscba will present Team Reno Tahoe Big Business. Topics discussed under this agenda item will include recent successes, new and exciting business opportunities, and the introduction of a team member that is making a difference in the organization.
All right. I'm going to send it over to the one and only Robert Chisel.
Good morning. This board meeting spotlight on a team member making a difference is Courtney Jager. Courtney is our finance director and most recently comes to us from the McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. She is a native of Reno and is glad to be back here in Reno. She is a great team member who is intelligent, hardworking, has really molded well with us, and is a great leader. We are pleased to have her as a team member. And Courtney, you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Thank you for that kind introduction, Robert. So first off, it's great to finally meet everyone on the board, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you in person one day. I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit more about myself and the work that I've been doing here at the RSCVA. So like Robert mentioned, I was born and raised in Reno. I graduated from UNR and I began my career in public accounting. I obtained my CPA license and I worked as a manager in public accounting, where I specialized in governmental clients for about 6 years. I later moved to Las Vegas, where I was the controller for the McCarran International Airport. I really enjoyed my time there, but I definitely missed the biggest little city, so I was excited to say yes to this opportunity. During my time with the RSCVA, the areas I've worked on include preparing the comprehensive annual financial report, overseeing the external audit process, and working with staff on various projects. I really enjoy working at the RSCVA, and I'm proud to be in this leadership position. This is a great organization. We have a well-defined mission, exceptional leadership, and we're governed by a unique mix of industry and community leaders. So all of this really makes the RSCVA a special place to work. Anyway, so thanks for taking the time to get to know me today, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you in the future.
Well, Courtney, it's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you too.
And I'm so glad you came back here.
Me too.
I'm very competitive. I like all our tax dollars to stay here. So good girl. All right. Well, thank you. I hope we didn't embarrass you too much. Good job, Robert. You always hire great people. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. No action on this either, other than grateful to have you, Courtney. Okay. Madam Clerk,
Yes,
sending it back to you.
On to item E4, Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority staff update. Charles Harris, President and CEO of the RSCVA, and the RSCVA staff will deliver updates on executive offices, marketing, sales, facilities, and finance.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's really excited to be here. I'm very happy to be in the Reno Sparks area and to get going. As I get started here, I just want to first of all thank the Sparks Mayor Ed Lawson for his service to the board, and welcome again, Councilwoman Bybee. Glad to have you with us. My talk here will be very brief, as I've just finished 2 weeks in the position. I'll turn it over here to the team here in a moment, but I just want to review a couple of things that have happened since I joined the team here on November 16th. First of all, the RSCVA secured the GBAC certification for multiple properties, which is fantastic and very important in our industry with best practices. And the recent announcements by the airport, JSX going into Orange County, United daily nonstops into Houston, Southwest nonstops resuming into Dallas, and Allegiant next year going into Orange County is fantastic and certainly needed for our destination. In the first 2 weeks of joining the team, I just want to quickly reflect on numerous meetings that I've had in the community, from EDAWN to ASM and moving forward, internal staff meetings, stakeholder meetings. Just about everybody on this call this morning I've met with or will be meeting with this week and moving forward, and certainly visiting the hotel properties to understand our destination and what we're doing. So I thank you all for the welcome and really excited to move forward. Want to wish everybody here a happy holidays. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Cunningham for the team report this morning. Jennifer.
Good morning, everyone. Lori Maurer, will you please pull up some of the graphs I'm going to go over? I'm going to just, for my presentation, touch on our scorecard, but I'm not going to go on the scorecard. I'm going on the pretty little pictures, if you don't mind. We've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to report our numbers post-COVID in a fashion that they are relevant. I'm sure we're all having that challenge. So we've come up with some charts to graphically and visually show the data that we have. With many of these, we thought it was appropriate to kind of show a rolling line of where we have been, and in looking at our forecast, how we are exceeding the forecast, which is very encouraging. The top right, I think ADR is a really great number to look at, and we're so proud of what the properties have done. For August alone, we are at an ADR of $124.31. That is 41% over what we forecasted. So the green line becomes very relevant starting July 1st. Prior to that, it was our old last fiscal year's forecast, which we did not manipulate or change at all. But going into the new fiscal year, we took COVID, of course, into consideration. And I'm pleased to say that we are beating the forecast. Scooting over on the right, cash room nights, you'll see that the big peak occurred when we reforecasted after the fiscal year started, and it goes down, but the variance with the darker blue line, we're doing better than we have forecasted. Scooting down to the quadrant that states occupancy rate, I'm pleased that we were forecasting overall occupancy, and I'm looking at year to date. We had forecasted 52%. Right now we're trending as of September 61.4%. And then the comp room nights, I think, is more important for hotel properties to kind of have an idea of what's going on in the marketplace. Next slide. All right, looking at air passengers, just wanted to give you a visual of, we all get the reports, but I wanted to give you a visual of how that is coming along. Gaming win, we don't obviously control that, but it's nice to see the gaming win start coming back, and the gaming wasn't as decimated. My favorite slide is this last one, taxable revenue. So the blue lines in this case are our actuals, and then the last three is where we forecasted we would be with the total taxable revenues coming into our organization being collected from all of the Washoe County hotel properties. So it's nice to see a slide where we are beating forecast, and we feel really good about the strength of it. I think our destination is doing far better than many others because of our location and our outdoor activities and that perception of our destination. And thank goodness for I-80 and the drive-up market. That's really been a boost for us. All right, my last slide, if you will. The importance of this slide, I think, for us to consider is the national web visits. And you'll see that in, obviously during COVID, it really shrank down. But I want the board to know that our team that operates the website and our advertising in the marketing department and our social media outreach, they have not taken a break. They're continuously out there interacting with clients, getting the word out in a very appropriate, subtle, careful way. And we are getting a lot of activity on our website. So I'm very encouraged about that. And of course, the most visited page is the page that talks about safety for visitors and what's going on in our destination to ensure visitors that their experience will be safe. Going forward, we're working with, I've talked about this company that we've collaborated with called Arrivalist, and they're the company that monitors visitor behavior and arrivals through visitor mobile devices as they enter Washoe Valley, enter the parameters of Washoe Valley. And we'll be sitting down with Charles and the marketing team. What we want to do is look at their data and come up with another quantitative measurement to augment and add to what we have here. So there's more to come. This is kind of a work in progress as we're all trying to find relevance in numbers and not necessarily just compare them to prior year. There's much more to the story than that. With that concludes our report for the marketing department. I'd like to turn it over to Mike Larragetta for the sales.
Thank you, Jennifer. For the record, Mike Larragetta, Vice President of Sales. Good morning, Chairwoman Chevy and respected board members. In my report today, I've got a lot of data to share, so bear with me. I apologize. I'm going to communicate these to you verbally and not use slides, but there's a lot to share because obviously we're reporting data obviously from September, October, and November. Within those updates, I'll be reporting the year-to-date gross net and net numbers versus proposed group room nights that were presented a few meetings ago. I would also like to highlight the number of in-person virtual site inspections, virtual and in-person site inspections here held year to date, and going off the fiscal year from July through November of 2020. In addition, we also wanted to take a look at the rebooking statistics as it related to what is canceled during the COVID period. We'll be looking at the groups, the number of groups and room nights that have canceled and have contracted dates for the future, the number of groups that have canceled that the team and properties are in discussion with for future dates, and then finally, the number of groups that have canceled that have decided not to return to Reno, Tahoe, or Sparks at this time. Specifically, as it relates to September, the contracted group room nights was 11,289. Of this number, convention sales represented 3,952, and sports was 7,337. There were no cancellations in the month of September, which is outstanding, which is something we've all been unfortunately becoming used to and what I've reported in prior board meetings. For the month of October, the gross number was 3,676. Unfortunately, we did experience 9,372 room nights and cancellations for the month of October. Saving the best for last, November, we had an outstanding month. We contracted 22,251 room nights. There's a significant booking within those numbers, but due to hotel contracts not being finalized at this time, I'm going to hold off until January to report the specifics and the details to that booking. But it's very exciting and great news. Qualifies as a citywide. So I'm anxious to share that with you when the time is appropriate. Cancellations for the month of November were 17,222. Year to date, July through November, gross contracted room nights totaled 59,124. If the proposed goals, and we will be presenting those at a future date, Mr. Harris and I discussed, and we felt it was appropriate to hold off on that until he had a better understanding of the goals and how they were achieved and how they were established. But assuming those goals were approved, through November, we'd be pacing at 59% to goal. So obviously not where we want to be, but under the circumstances, I still think it's a very positive message to send that we've hit 59% of that number on what I define as an aggressive goal. After cancellations within this period, the net number would be 13,376. I wanted to let the board know, I think it's important to realize that of those 59,124 room nights, they're all for future dates, right? Those are building a base at our hotel partners, whereas the cancellations represent groups that were scheduled to meet between July of 2020 through March of 21. So this is new business for the future, not impacting the dates of March or July through March of 21. Year to date, we've completed 11 in-person or virtual site inspections. From July through November, the team has sourced 100 group leads representing 132,383 room nights for future dates. Now I'd like to update the board specifically on groups that canceled due to COVID-19. 104 groups representing 161,052 room nights canceled due to COVID-19. Of these 104 groups, 67, which represent 102,000 room nights, have contracted new dates in the future in our community. 26 groups representing an additional 45,000 room nights canceled, but are returning to Reno, Sparks, or North Lake Tahoe and are in discussion with the team and our properties and determining new dates for the future. Those totals represent 91% retention of groups that have canceled due to COVID that have contracted new dates for the future or in discussion to contract dates and hopefully just waiting for finalizing of the contracts. 11 groups representing 14,680 room nights canceled their programs and have unfortunately made the decision to not return or rebook to Reno, Sparks, or North Lake Tahoe at this time. In terms of activities to engage meeting planners and convention clients during the pandemic, we continue to host unique and fun virtual events. These virtual events have primarily featured local celebrity hosts from gold medalist David Weiss, Chef Mark Esty, our own Mayor Rscba, Laura Kimpton of Kimpton Hotels, and this past Tuesday, Dustin Weiss from Dorinda's Chocolates. Tuesday's event was a chocolate and wine pairing attended by 32 meeting planners, decision makers, and third-party representatives. I'd be happy to field any questions at this time. If not, that concludes my recap, and I will turn it over to Mr. Jimenez to provide an update on tourism sales. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Hi. So when people were rebooking or groups were rebooking, and you said they were rebooking into the future, what are the years out, from obviously whether it's 21 or beyond, how would you characterize the flow of the rebooking in terms of future years?
Yeah, so the groups that are annual groups that book the destination consistently, we're looking to secure their dates into 21, 22 during the same time frame. In terms of the one-off groups that canceled that are looking to rebook, the majority of those are in 21 or beyond. Yes, the 2021 calendar year in terms of solidifying a contract for those dates, I feel that the majority of those groups feel there's still a lot of risk involved in securing dates in that time, and most of them are beyond the 2021 calendar year.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
All right. By the way, great job, Mike. And I think the board should really know that your entire Reno Tahoe team has been on, like, seriously, I call it the national tour, because you guys are, well, seriously, like, they're at the table at every like massive top 10 industry event, which is super cool. Because it kind of gets back to me with all the other mayors throughout the country, and they're like, oh my God, Reno's been on, you know, this panel and this panel and this panel. And really, like, I don't know what you guys did or if you paid to be in those positions. No, but it's because people love you guys in the industry. And so what the board probably doesn't know, because I sit on a lot of those national panels for the Conference of Mayors for Tourism, Arts, Parks, Entertainment, and Sports across the country. Your team, Reno Tahoe, is at every panel. And so I was talking to someone from US Travel, and they were telling me that, like, out of the 5 top destinations right now during this COVID pandemic, that Reno is one of the markets that is staying top of mind. And really, Jennifer, that's because of your connections and what you've done. And then you guys all bring the magic to the table. And then when you guys get on stage, all this like energy comes alive. It's really cool to see the sort of night and day destinations of who represents them. So I just wanted everyone to know from the board, because you guys probably aren't, you know, in those panels because they're so tourism related, right? But it's really cool to see nationally that you guys have really made your mark. So when you see some of these numbers, there's a reason why you are seeing the increase and the success that actually we've been able to hold on to, because your team, just so you guys know, nationally are doing a phenomenal job. So I'm super, super proud of you. So great job, Jennifer and Mike on the
Thank you, ma'am.
national fronts, and Christina too, because she's killing it on our social. Love it. Okay.
Well, we really appreciate the recognition, and I really sum it up into 3 words. I think a lot of it has to do with relationship, communication, and trust. And we've built that over the years, and during a time frame of when we need to rely on those relationships, they're answering our calls and they're trusting to book their with us. So thank you.
Well, they totally are, because you're in with like the biggest and best of them. And then I love it because then they're like, Reno, how's Reno getting in the, you know, these top tiers? And it's all because seriously, you guys are really, really well sort of loved throughout the industry. And so I just don't think our board really understands, you know, what you guys are really doing and bringing to the table when you have to compete with such big markets. And then, you know, they've got Reno. So it's very, very cool to see. And so I just want everyone to know how hard you guys are working, but also how well respected you are in the industry. So great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, another favorite person of mine, we're going to send it over to Art.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for the record, Art Jimenez, Executive Director of Tourism Sales. And here's a quick tourism sales update. As you can see by the scorecard in your packets, OTA and travel agent room night production continue to represent just over 96% of third-party tourism sales activity through October, with 171,000 room nights. For comparison, these 2 categories represented 89% over the same period last year. So we are relying on these 2 categories for the time being. So consequently, we're going to continue to focus our tourism sales efforts in the OTA, or online travel agency space, and travel agent channels. We've concluded campaigns with Expedia, American Airlines, and Priceline, and we're on the back end of a GDS promotion with Sabre targeting travel agents. We will have full reporting at the next board meeting, but preliminary numbers indicate that these campaigns have exceeded our goals. However, we do have results for the July through December Priceline program, which generated over 35,000 room nights compared to 25,000 over the same period last year. And to wrap up, we've also conducted 15 email deployments centered around destination updates and new air service announcements. And additionally, we participated in 2 trade shows virtually, a Go West Summit and National Tour Association. This concludes my update. If there aren't any questions, thank you.
All right, any questions for Art? No? That means you did a great job.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
All right. With that being said, okay, I'm going to send it back to you, Madam Clerk. Do we have to take any action on this, Ben? Just presentations, I don't believe we do.
Meeting here. No, these aren't set for action. These are just information only.
Okay,
Madam
No.
Chair, can I ask a quick question?
please do.
And Jennifer, going back to a couple of your slides, just for a clarification, the ADR and total revenue, are those indicative of all of the collection zones on the ADR and total revenue? I was unsure about that.
Yes, we're not looking at just hotel only segment. It's across the board, all revenue, including Airbnb, if that's maybe part of your question, the entire Washoe County.
So all of the collection zones. Great.
Correct.
Yes, and if I could pass it along to Mr. Ben McDonald from here. Do you have an update this morning?
All right. All right, we're going to send it over to you. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't believe we have any additional board relevant updates for this month. Thank you.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right, Madam
On to
Clerk.
item E5, legal counsel update.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just briefly, I'd like to put on the record, the default for RSCVA committees is they are advisory only, meaning when an RSCVA committee takes action, that action then needs to go to the next regular board meeting and be approved by the board. At the outset of COVID, at the April 3rd meeting, the board took action to give the finance committee the ability to take binding action. So basically, to enable the finance committee to respond to any COVID-related issues without having to go back to the board, they made the finance committee a binding committee. That designation was made until the end of COVID or until the organization hired the permanent CEO. So I just want to make clear and close the loop on that, but now that we've hired Mr. Harris, the finance committee goes back to being an advisory committee only. And with that, I have nothing else to report.
All right. Thank you so much. Sounds good. Any questions for Ben? Seeing that there are none, I'm going to send it back to you, Madam Clerk.
All right, we're on to items F, Finance Division. Item F1, review, discussion, and possible approval of the opinion and findings of the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, containing the auditor's required communication letter.
All right. So this is one of your most favorite things to do, Robert Chisel. And if there's one person that taught me about the CAFR and everything to know about the CAFR, it's you. So go ahead, take it away.
Well, I would love to talk about the CAFR this time, but this year we're going to let Courtney take the honor of presenting the comprehensive annual financial report. Courtney, take it away.
That's great.
So hello again, Courtney Jager, Director of Finance. We're jumping into the most exciting presentation of the year, which is the CAFR presentation. So, before we get into the presentation slides, I did want to turn your attention to the CAFR board packet. In that packet is our staff report, a copy of the CAFR, and the required audit communications letter. Audit standards require that the auditors communicate with the board in a separate letter about items that aren't specifically called out in the CAFR. For example, if there were any adjustments as a result of the audit or disagreements with management, those would be addressed in the letter, but there were none. So we'll go ahead and jump into the presentation. Here is an overview of what we'll discuss today. We'll do a quick review of the structure and content of the CAFR, review the fiscal year 20 external audit results, discuss the fiscal year 20 financial results, and quickly discuss the popular annual financial report. So here is an overview of the structure and content of the CAFR. Within the CAFR itself, the financial section is the best way to get an understanding of our financial position. So within the financial section, you'll find management's discussion and analysis on pages 4 to 13. This is a great narrative of how the year went, and it includes comparisons to the prior year. The statistical section also has interesting information. In that section, several of the tables are presented with 10-year trends. All right, next up are the external audit results. As you're aware, per NRS, all Nevada local governments must receive an annual audit by a professional accounting firm. On the call today, we have Pamela Truss with Eide Bailly, which is our external audit firm. Pamela was the manager on the external audit, and she is here if there are any questions for her. So this year, we received an unmodified audit opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that can be obtained. Essentially, the auditors are attesting that our financial statements are materially correct and fairly represent our financial position. You'll notice towards the back of the CAFR, there was one item reported as a finding. However, this finding did not affect our opinion. Essentially, in the prior year, the third-party actuary did not update the actuarial valuation to reflect all changes in the OPEB plan. The actuary discovered this issue as they prepared the current year valuation, and we posted a prior period adjustment to reflect the corrected amounts. This only impacted government-wide net position, and government-wide statements are the full accrual conversion of our financial statements. So again, this item did not affect the general fund, did not affect funds individually, and did not impact our opinion. So next, we'll discuss the RSCVA's financial performance in the fiscal year 20. As you can see, the CAFR is around 100 pages. So rather than doing a page-by-page turn, I'll instead summarize some of the financial highlights for 2020. Here we have a 5-year trend for revenues in the governmental funds. Although we saw decreases this year, the revenues were actually within 4% of the fiscal year 16 levels. So essentially, the drop in revenues really wasn't that large comparatively due to strong room tax revenues in May and June, as well as strong revenues prior to the pandemic. Here we have a 10-year trend of the ending fund balance for the general fund. Although fund balance decreased from last year, it's still ahead of expectations and budget. Robert will talk about this more in his presentation, but in our fiscal year 21 budget, we conservatively budgeted the ending fiscal year 20 general fund balance at $4.73 million. Our actual ending fund balance was $9.58 million, which was $4.8 million ahead of expectations. Again, Robert will touch on this more later. All right, so we took a look at the general fund balance trends, but I also wanted to break down the composition of ending fund balance. We have non-spendable fund balance, which represents items we've paid for but not yet expensed. Restricted fund balance represents tourism surcharge revenues. Next is assigned fund balance, which represents ending fiscal year 20 resources that we budgeted towards fiscal year 21 expenditures. And the remainder is unassigned fund balance, including our rainy day fund, which will be discussed later in the presentation. Here we have a 5-year trend of the general fund cash balances. We ended fiscal year 20 with strong cash balances. So earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that we were close to fiscal year 16 in terms of revenue and ending fund balance. But you'll see here that we exceeded fiscal year 16 cash balances by nearly $2 million, which reflects our strong financial position. Here we have an overview of general fund expenditures. The COVID pandemic, as you know, hit towards the end of the year, but we were able to take quick, decisive action to reduce expenditures, and we came in $8.3 million under our original budget. Here we have a 10-year history of our debt balances. As you can see, we continue to make great progress towards paying down our debt. Later, Robert will be presenting a separate agenda item related to a planned debt refunding this year. As you know, in the prior year, we saved about $8.5 million over the life of our debt with a refunding. So we're looking forward to saving the RSCVA money again. Here you can see that we're still doing well regarding the strategic policies that the board has adopted. Some of the high points include general fund reserves, which are close to our 10% goal, currently sitting at 8%. Again, this refers to unassigned fund balance, and as I mentioned in my previous slides, total fund balance has exceeded expectations. Regarding the capital fund goals, capital projects were canceled in March, but up until that time, we spent $3.5 million on deferred capital projects. We also continued to make additional payments towards our debt. And lastly, I will mention the PAFR. This is not required, but it's encouraged by the Government Finance Officers Association. The PAFR presents a condensed version of the CAFR. It's intended to be easy to read and intends to make our financial results more understandable to parties who may not have a financial background. And the PAFR will be available on our website to review. So that concludes the CAFR presentation. Let me know if you have any questions.
All right, fantastic, Courtney. Great job. Absolutely great job. All right, I'm going to send it back to the board. Do you have any questions for Courtney? All right, I'm not hearing any and I can't see everyone, but Courtney, that means you did a phenomenal job. No questions.
Thank you.
All right, Robert, I'm going to send it back to you.
That's the conclusion of the presentation of the CAFR. Staff is looking for approval of the comprehensive annual financial report, and we will be sending a resolution around for signatures. So.
Okay, perfect. So we just need to take action to accept the CAFR. So at this time, may I get a motion from a board member?
Approval of the CAFR report.
All right, thank you, Andy. I have a motion and I have a second from Charlene.
I'll second that.
All right, fantastic. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Nice job, Robert. Okay. Sending it back to you, Madam Clerk, and I believe we're going to go right back to Robert. Am I correct?
We are going right back to Robert. I'll let him take us into the next item.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The next item is we are recommending the refinancing of our outstanding bonds. Also on this call or on this meeting, we have John Peterson, our bond advisor from J&A Consulting, and Kendra Follett, our bond counsel from Sherman and Howard, and they'll be able to answer any questions should they come up. Basically, based upon current market rates, the savings from the refunding are anticipated to be approximately $6 million over the remaining life of the bonds, or an average savings of about $500,000 a year. Currently, the authority has 3 series of bonds issued and outstanding. And some of you may remember in 2019, we refinanced some of our bonds. And at the time, we thought interest rates couldn't get much lower. Well, they have gotten lower, so we're looking at refinancing them. All these bonds and their predecessor series were issued for the expansion and remodel of the Reno Sparks Convention Center beginning back in 2000. We are not looking at extending the life of the bonds or taking any money out. It's just looking to refinance to take advantage of interest rate savings. I will mention the bonds will be issued through Washoe County, and we are working with Washoe County to take advantage of the lower interest rates. We are issuing an RFP for an underwriter. The county commission will adopt a bond resolution and bond ordinance. We'll price the bonds and close the bonds, hopefully in springtime. Does Mr. Peterson or Kendra Follett have anything to add?
Robert, this is John Peterson with J&A Consulting. I don't have anything to add. I think that was a great presentation. We are looking at refinancing this debt for wonderful savings. So I will pause and see if Kendra has any comments or answer any questions.
I do not have anything else to add. This is Kendra. Thank you.
Robert, I have a question about timing. Why is it, and I probably don't appreciate the process of going through the county, but why is it taking so long to be able to hit the market? You know, markets don't stay static. And in 4 months, there's a very good likelihood that there could start to be, you know, a slight rise. I don't think there's going to be meaningful, but it's only a guess So I'm wondering why we can't hit the market so much quicker, given that we're a current issuer with outstanding bonds, and make sure we can lock in, especially now. I got to believe underwriters would be quite, competitive to bid for our bond issue.
Robert, I'll handle that question if that's okay.
Okay.
John Peterson with J&A Consulting for the record. The reason that we're waiting for a couple of months is because one of the bonds, the 2011 bond, has a no prepayment clause that's effective until July of 2021. And under federal tax law rules, we cannot issue tax-exempt bonds to refinance that prior to April 2nd. So in order to kind of make this more efficient, to do all of it at once, and really the tax exemption saves the RSCVA quite a bit of money, we are waiting until that time to do all of them together.
If you were to break it up, let's say to take advantage, which I get the point that you're bringing up, which is a very good point, what would be the split? And would it, I heard what you said, you don't think, you want to do it all at once, but I'm just wondering if there's a way to bifurcate it, if it's meaningful enough, a portion to get done now.
I think there's two answers to that. I think, the portion that has to wait is approximately $20 million. In the backup material that Robert provided, it breaks out the outstanding balance of those three bonds, and the 2011 bonds is just under $20 million. In terms of process, though, there still are several steps that we have to get through. I would only anticipate that if we wanted to break this thing up, maybe we could shave, maybe six weeks, and that might be optimistic. We may only be able to shave 4 weeks off of that. We are coming up on the holiday season. So, getting those underwriters on board, yeah, they're hungry, but folks do go home for the holidays. So I don't know that there would be a huge advantage to do that, but it's certainly something we could look at if that's what the board would want us to do.
Yeah. I think you also appreciate that investors, meaning institutional investors, usually get very large inflows coming in for January. And so they have money that they have to put to work. April is a whole different scenario. It could be a very strong market, but it might not be. And I would seriously look at the opportunity to bifurcate it. And even if it takes you 6 weeks, you would hit the market in January. So not saying you have to, just a suggestion.
This is Robert. We still have to, we're issuing them through the county. So we will have to still go to the board, get an RFP with underwriters. When you said 6 weeks, we'd probably only save 6 weeks. We'd probably still be issuing in the February timeframe. So, unfortunately, this is a government process we go through.
Madam Chair.
Go right ahead, Charlene.
Yeah, Robert, I had a question following up on that. When do we lock in? Is it February? Is it April? Can we lock in? And I agree with Don on locking into the lowest rate that we can. So can you give me an idea timeline wise when that rate would be locked in so that we can take best advantage of it?
This is John Peterson. I'll answer that question if that's okay. I would expect that we would lock in the interest rates around the second week of March. The closing of the bond, that closing process does take a few weeks, so that takes us into the April timeframe. But in terms of knowing what our interest rate is, really are looking, around the second, maybe third week of March at the latest, based on our current schedule.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions? Seeing that there are none, I believe we have to give you a motion. So at this time, may I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Kornstein. Do I have a second?
Second, Andy.
All right, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. Going to send it back to you, Madam Clerk.
Can I just clarify, because there was some discussion about breaking out a portion of the bond. So is the motion to approve the team to go ahead with the issuance as presented, or are we looking at breaking out that 20 million, does that need to come back? I just want to make sure we're clear on the record here.
Well, I
Oh, go ahead.
understood that, yeah, I understood that they were going to look at it, and I think, delegating the authority to the team based on what the trade-offs would be is fine with me. If it makes sense to bifurcate it, I'd be strongly in favor of doing that, taking costs into account. And if not, then I think they have the authority to go forward in one offering.
Mayor, this is Kendra Fawley. May I make a comment?
Please.
So regardless of how we proceed, one or two transactions, we will have to take a final bond resolution or bond resolutions back to the RSCVA board. So you will see this again once we kind of have a final product.
Okay, sounds good. So at this time, then going back, so we had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, sending it back to you, Madam Clerk.
Yes, we're on to item F3, public hearing regarding the approval of a resolution adopting the budget augmentation for the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, we're not going to let you go, Robert.
Nope.
Going right back to you.
All right. Robert Chisel again for the record. I am going to be presenting our budget augmentation and kind of going through our beginning fund balance, where our room tax revenues are coming, expenditure augmentations by fund. In a little context here, it has been a very unusual budget year ever since COVID hit. As you know, we developed a very lean budget for this fiscal year. Coming into this budget was developed in that April-May timeframe. In developing this year's budget and the April through June period of last year, we developed multiple scenarios to work from and ended up adopting what we called scenario F as far as what we're looking for room tax revenues. And from that, we built our expenditures around that. As many of you are aware, we acted quickly to the pandemic starting in March. Even before the governor announced the lockdown, we began cutting expenses. We cut expenses for capital projects, multiple contracts. I, for one, am very proud of the business-like manner we quickly addressed the situation. Our board, you all were very quick at working on making adjustments. We reduced staff starting May 1st. I still believe we're the only government agency in Washoe to cut full-time permanent positions. We also cut our salaries beginning May 1st. Because of these actions and revenues exceeding projections, we have the ability to augment our budget while remaining very conservative in our financial position. And one of the points also, scenario F showed us pulling cash through December, and that actually we're doing better there too. Room tax revenues were at 23% in July compared to prior fiscal year, rising to about 60% in 2019. We also maintained minimal expenditures and reduced staff as we went along. As we presented the budget in May, we stated as revenues came in better, we would seek to augment. So the source of our additional money for augmentation is from our beginning fund balance, which was ending June 30th. You heard a little bit about that in the CAFR presentation. The other portion is revenues from this year, and of those, we're only using a portion of them, only for July and August. As you saw from our CAFR of 2020, the beginning fund balance was 4.8 million over our scenario F projections, due primarily to revenues exceeding expectations and reductions in expenditures through June 30th. We all know the scenario was very conservative. Overall, actual revenues for March through June exceeded scenario F budget by about 30%. We also had reduction in expenditures compared to original budget. We had debt savings from prior years. Part of that was from that refinancing of 2019. However, our facilities did exceed our expense estimates, but overall our expenditures were less and our revenues were better. So we ended up with about $4.8 million of ending fund balance from prior year. Revenues for this year have exceeded budget as well. Room tax collections from July to October are 2.4 times the budgeted amount. I want to emphasize we're not augmenting all of our additional revenue we have seen to date. And we are not changing the conservative projections of revenue for the remainder of the year either. We're keeping a very conservative approach to our budget. Just looking at resources available from last fiscal year in July and August of this year, we have about 7.6 million of revenues available. We are looking to augment 6.2 million, leaving 1.3 million in additional fund balance. So even of the additional revenues that we're touching, we're going to put 1.3 million to fund balance. Our cash balance as of October 31st was over $10 million. And in our projections, we had shown us being about 2.4 million. We had been anticipating to draw on our cash through January. We have been adding cash in August, September, October, and November. Here is a kind of where the expenditure augmentation will go by fund. I'll talk about the general fund in a second. The primary other fund would be the capital fund. Currently, our budget for capital for this fiscal year is only $240,000. We are looking to augment that with $750,000. Normally, we would spend $3 to $4 million on capital. This is a small piece, but we feel, we have very large buildings. We don't want to get too far behind in our capital maintenance. Next, this is our general fund. The money from the augmentation is going to the general fund is 6.2 million. Over 60% of this will go to the marketing department. I'd like to point out promotion and advertising budget in the marketing department was originally budgeted at only 24% of the prior year budget. Mr. Harris and Cunningham would be more appropriate to talk about it, but I know they have stated that they're not looking at spending it now. They just want to have the resources available when things open up to be able to hit the ground and not have a delay. So the biggest portion there you see is to augment the marketing department. The next biggest increase or the next biggest slice is for apportionment. This is the money that goes per Nevada revised statutes back to the Incline Village Crystal Bay Visitors Bureau for revenues that are earned up at the Lake Tahoe Basin, and that goes back to them due to the revenues being better. The expenditure needs to be increased as well. Augmentation objective is primarily on marketing. Some of the other items we are looking to include in the augmentation is restoration of employee salaries. This is to restore employee salaries. And just to be clear, this is only to remove the 10 or 15% pay cut to the employees, not to be retroactive. There is no merit or cost of living increases for any employee. This would mean simply a reinstatement of employee salaries effective December 6, 2020. Some of the other items that were included in the augmentation that were unanticipated when we built the budget. Actually, the CEO package amount was a little bit more than we had budgeted. There's some replacement of aging IT equipment that we would like to include in this year, and restoration of some contracts. We did include the purchase of the space whale, but that item has been pulled. So we are not proposing to spend the resources on that. That concludes my presentation. Staff recommends the board approve this augmentation of the funds as detailed to comply with NRS 354 and to implement the objectives detailed above. to include the reinstatement of employee salaries effective December 6, 2020. Thank you.
All right, great job. Great job, Robert, as always. This is actually where you always shine. I also want to clarify, because you had the space whale on there, and I think there could have been some confusion, and unfortunately this item was pulled. And so, and I'm glad it was only because the staff report was pretty vague, and I want everyone to understand that was money coming from the city of Reno, and it was dedicated to marketing and tourism dollars. So that was not coming from the RSCVA. That was money coming over to the city of Reno, and I'm going to direct that money does not come back to the RSCVA. I think it was $500,000. So I'm going to make sure that that will not come back to the RSCVA. So I wanted to point that out so that it won't be used at this board's discretion. With that being said, any questions for Mr. Chisel?
Yeah, this is Mark Sturbins. Robert, I thought there was some discussion about possibly making up for lost wages. How much would that amount be?
If we reinstated employee salaries, the cuts for employees, it would amount to $188,000.
For the
going back from May 1st through December 5th of what the pay cut was that the staff took.
180,000 in total.
188, yeah, and change.
Not included in your recommendation today.
That is not in the recommendation today.
Got it. Thank you.
Right.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So Robert, in our pre-board meeting, so I'm a little unclear. You're saying it's no retroactive. This would be moving forward from today on employee salaries being reinstated, or it's retroactive from last spring?
It is not retroactive to next spring. So it would only mean that those employees that took either a 10 or 15% pay cut, their rate of pay would be adjusted. Actually, our pay period starts Sunday, December 6th. So effective next Monday, in all intents and purposes, their pay rate would be restored. No back pay, no reinstatement of pay. Yes, we had talked about that, but the decision has been made to not ask for that at this time.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I have one more quick question. On the augmentation today, was there anything, I know in the pre-board meeting we discussed possibly not doing all of it until Charles had a chance to really sit down more thoroughly, look at what expenditures, that he approved of it, and that maybe what we approved today did not include the full amount of the $6.2 million, or is it a recommendation that we go ahead and approve it with Charles guiding the way on how that money is, how and when the money is disseminated?
Staff is recommending approval of the full amount. Mr. Harris will, of course, have full discretion as to when and how to spend those resources. Mr. Harris?
Yeah, I just want to weigh in terms of the marketing dollars that were allocated as part of this. Certainly, I would not want to put that money in play right now. More than anything else, the return won't be there. People are not ready to travel. And until we see the data that shows that people are, the majority of that money will be held until the data shows that has changed. What we will do is we will continue specifically with travel and tenders that's online with third-party partners where people have an affinity to travel and even during this tough time will travel. But the majority of that money we will hold on to. The challenge with that is if we wait to get approval on that, we could be behind the 8 ball to then activate the programs that we want to later on. So with the board's approval, I will sit on a lot of that money until we deem it the right time to be able to activate in the marketplace.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And I just want to reiterate, this is a constant theme that we are hearing on these national panels, is that you better be ready to go, right? People are preparing and planning. And if you're going to invest in one thing, they've stressed more than anything with a massive economic development return is arts and culture. And especially because those artists are not working, some of those restaurants, you know, all these culture movements, and people are now starting to kind of lay the groundwork of where they do want to go. I think once we're ready to travel, it's going to be like blowing the doors off of something we've never seen before. But this board, I would say, is a little, I'm glad we're doing this now, Charles. But I mean, you really have to think ahead, because that's what we're hearing. If you're going to invest in anything, invest in what people want to see. That's your arts and culture and food movements. They want to know that you're taking those investments. And that's what I keep hearing nationally, because people are not quite ready to travel. You're only seeing a certain percentage. And so I want to commend Jennifer and Christina and Mike and honestly, in Art, you guys have done a phenomenal job. And I got to tell you, you must be working 24/7, because like I said, you're on like every national panel. You're just like, I mean, just hitting it. But I feel like the board really needs to know what's happening nationally and what people are talking about and how we are trying to keep our head above water when it comes to tourism and the things that are working and the things that aren't working. So I think that's great. So I appreciate that we're like thinking ahead, because everyone is getting ready. They're researching cities that they want to go to, because everyone's tired of being, you know, cooped up. So great job.
Madam Mayor, I believe Ann Silver.
Go ahead, Ann. Take it away.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I just want to revisit the issue of the employee compensation reinstatement. And just to close the loop, I recall a few meetings ago, there was discussion about reinstatement and retroactivity. If I understand what I'm hearing today, the recommendation from Robert is that that the salary cuts be reinstated effective December 6th, but the recommendation has not been made to make those cuts retroactive. Is that correct? Is that the staff's recommendation?
That is correct. That is the recommendation at this point.
Okay.
If I could weigh in as well, Madam Chair.
Go right ahead.
And I would, to reiterate what Mayor Rscba just mentioned about the how staff has performed during this period of time and being ready and prepared in a recovery when travel is ready to return. And Ms. Silver's remembrance of what we talked about, I too think that it is something that we should talk about in the future. I'm sure there are some reasons behind the scenes on those decisions, and I support that at the moment. But I do think, given the reduction of staff, the amount of work the staff has done over time, the return of business activity that we've seen, and the budgets that have returned more swiftly than we originally thought, I think going back to our original scenarios of budgeting last year, we went from A to F. We ended up on F, but I think we're about at A, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chisel. So I think we have definitely performed better than we had thought. So I would, for one, as a board member, like to see this item further addressed if it is not today. Thank you.
Anyway, I think those are great comments. Like I said, I can't praise you guys enough, because I know how hard you've been working. You really have. So it's impressive. Okay, with that being said, if there are no further questions, I'd like to get a motion.
I'm sorry, Mayor Rscba, I just have
Go
one
ahead.
comment. I would just, we are giving approval to give, it sounds like, staff the direction, the flexibility to be able to use the monies for marketing and CapEx at their discretion if and when the time is right. I think that's what the motion is about, in addition to the reinstatement of the salaries. I just want to make a comment that I would just encourage staff to really look at those capital expenditures. And obviously we can't let the facilities go too far behind, but we also still don't know exactly what the future is going to hold for everything with the pandemic. And so I would just encourage staff to really just focus on projects that are absolutely critical at this point.
All right, sounds good. May I get a motion? All right, I'm going to ask my vice chair, Anne, please give me a motion.
Yes, motion to approve the financial report and accept the recommendations of staff.
Okay, fantastic. I have a motion and a second.
Second, this is Daniel.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, Madam Clerk, right back at you.
Wonderful, thank you. We are pulling item F4. We are on to item G, public comments from the floor. And I do not have any public comments at this time, Madam Mayor.
Okay, you guys are easy. We have about 3 hours of public comment over at the city. So this is, we certainly welcome public comment, but also it's nice that everyone can get along with their day and get moving. So anyway, okay, thanks so much, you guys. Have a great day. See you soon. Anything else that we need to add, Corey? Nothing?
Nope, we are adjourning, Madam Mayor.
All right, great. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.